Home. I know I've heard the word before. Dreamt of castles and mansions, sunshine and laughter on the darkest days. When I left my parents' house, I thought I was a big deal. Thought I knew all there was to know, and quickly found myself gasping for air, choking on the smoke of my own ignorance, feasting on a love I thought was only real in the movies, and starving from the loss of all I held sacred. I built a house made of glass and watched it crack. Now, it is the start of senior year, and acceptance was a class I passed last semester when I studied abroad. I can still see the scars he left, even if they've grown faint. What is life but a continuous process of healing anyway? I have learned that you can still see through a cracked window, that a best friend calls pain wisdom, and that a home is only more of a home once you have cried in it. Which is why I call today a homecoming. Thurston Hall has called me her child since I was a freshman, gave me a second chance as a sophomore resident advisor, told me to take a victory lap as a senior. Mabel said she has one more year left in her. The renovation is on the calendar now, and who knows what she'll look like. I have discovered her cracks as she has mine, and maybe she caused a few of them. But sometimes mothers make mistakes when teaching the hard lessons. Now, I'm ready to see my friends, ready to start my senior year, ready to help a few freshmen figure out this crazy world none of us signed up for, and ready to say hello to home for the last time.
So right behind me is Thurston Hall, the largest dorm at GW. It houses a bit of over half of every freshman class and is scheduled to be gutted and renovated at the end of this year. The dorm was purchased by the university in the early 60s and named the Super Dorm until 1964 when Mrs. Mabel died. She was the first woman to graduate from GW, and in her honor, the Super Dorm, which it was called, was renamed Mabel Nelson Thurston Hall. Many freshmen, including myself, said our first goodbyes to our parents on this very sidewalk right here, and we began our college journey here. And I can remember it just like it was yesterday. I'm on my way today, every day awaiting something more. I'm on my way today, every day awaiting the start of my own life. I've grown tired of the faces of my small town, and let's face it, they're all just sheeple or in the bourgeoisie. So I'm moving down to DC, the first woman in my family to go to college. Yeah, I made it to college. I will hail from the George Washington University. Mabel Nelson Thurston Hall, the place I'm gonna be. So I say goodbye to Philly, say goodbye to all my friends. Our story's just beginning, we are nowhere near the end. There's not much more to say, all my bags are packed, it's moving day, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hear it, welcome home.
My name's Andrew Hessbacher, and you can probably tell that Thurston Hall is my home. I moved in the fall of 2016 as a freshman, served my sophomore year as an RA, spent my entire junior year abroad, and returned to be a resident advisor my senior year, this year. I'm a music major at GW, and all music majors must complete a final project. I wanted to create a musical memorial to Thurston. You might have heard about it. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, producing a musical was no longer possible. So I've converted to this video project. 9 stories in a basement, the Thurston Memorial. I hope this memorial serves as kind of the final montage goodbye that you might see at the end of a TV series, going over some of Thurston's highlight moments. I've spoken with former residents ranging from the 60s all the way to this year about their experiences in Thurston, what it was like moving in, the crazy experiences they had, why it became a home if it was. As most of you probably know, Thurston is scheduled to be renovated at the end of this academic year, which means it's not exactly going to look the same. From the outside, it'll look the same. They're keeping the facade, as they do with most historical buildings here in the district, but the inside will be gutted. And it kind of needs to happen. The 90-year-old building has bathroom cave-ins, pipes that rattle, you can hear everything through the walls, and the elevators get stuck more often than I would like to admit. But just because of all those problems doesn't mean it wasn't a home for the tens of thousands of people that live there. Those 9 stories in a basement have experienced a lot in their last 60 years as a GW dorm. And I hope this video memorial serves as a reminder of that history and an opportunity for all of us to say goodbye to a place that was our home.
Okay, so my name is Karen Spindell. I was at GW from September 1965 till June 1969, and I was in Thurston for my first 2 years, for my first year and my sophomore year. Yeah, when we moved in, the official name was New Residence Hall for Women. I think it only opened in like 63 or something, and I was here in 65, so it was pretty new. It wasn't named yet, and we all called it Superdorm. And then it was named Thurston. I don't remember if it was named when I was here or not.
My name's Chad Byerly, class of '94. I lived in Thurston Hall from 1990 to 1991.
And I'm Rusty Bielefeld. I also was in the same year, same floor as Chad, 1990 to 1991.
So I think we probably met on the 8th floor where we both had our rooms. So our rooms were on same hallway, different ends of the hallway.
What rooms, if you mind saying?
821?
I think I was 827, I think. Yeah.
I'm Nick. I lived in Thurston from 2019 to 2020, that school year, before getting sent back home in March because of the COVID-19 crisis, which was a huge bummer. And I'm tentatively, unofficially, a poli-sci major with a focus in public policy. I got a Thurston 6, which was, I think, my 11th choice out of 13. I didn't want 5 roommates. I feel like that's like almost needs no explanation. You know, it was a super hot day, and the building was hot because there were just like 1,000 kids and 2,000 parents in there, and then like 1,000 siblings, and you know, so we had to walk up the 7 flights of stairs with my bags because there was no way we were going to get in one of the 2 dumpy little elevators. I chose the room that was like the single closet room. And I was like, oh, this is my room. And I'm like looking around the corner and there's no door in it. There's the door frame for sure. You can see where the hinges used to be and where the door latch used to be, but there was no door in it.
My room, if you remember, was also a 6, and we also did not have a door on a single. The person who lived in that room contacted Fix-It and got them to put on a door.
That's what I did. I called them up. I was like, give me a door. They were like, okay. And then they came by 9:30 in the morning. One guy came in, measured the door. They came back at 1 o'clock with this giant piece of wood that they found in storage and cut to fit the dimensions. And it wasn't a door. It was just a piece of wood. And they just spent like an hour and a half like installing the hinges and installing the doorknob with the lock and everything. And it didn't fit properly, but it was fine because it was like, it really felt like it was mine. You know, it wasn't like painted or anything. It was just this piece of wood, which was great because I felt like I had free reign to do whatever I wanted with it. So on the inside, I had everybody who ever came to the room, I had them sign the door. And before we left, I was able to fill almost the entire thing with signatures.
I'm Randy Christensen. I'm a professor at George Washington University. My main home here is in the University Writing Program, where I teach the UW 1020 class, which is a required writing seminar for first-year students. As I was coming in as director of writing in the disciplines, that I realized that it might be a good thing to be part of the faculty in residence program. I knew colleagues who had done this. They had had really positive experiences. And so I approached the vice provost who was, or vice dean who was running the program at the time, to say, this is something I'd be interested in. And we had a conversation and there weren't any openings at the time. And 2 weeks later, she called me up and said, hey, the person who lives in Thurston is moving out. Would you be interested in being faculty in residence in Thurston? I was like, yeah, I think I would like that a lot because I teach first-year students and now I would be faculty in residence with a lot of first-year students. So I want to say that was 15, 16, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, that was summer of 2015. So I lived in Thurston for 5 years.
My name is Brian Stoller. I lived in Thurston from 1995 to 1996.
And I am Tracy Shanks, and I also lived in Thurston, 95 to 96, and right across the hall from Brian Stoller.
What floor?
5th floor.
5th floor.
What rooms?
513.
And 512.
I think for me, so I mean, we met early on since we were across the hall. And I think for me, so I had grown up moving around, been overseas, I like researched schools that I wanted to go to. I definitely wanted to be here. I definitely wanted to get out of Ohio because that's where I've been for a couple of years. I'm so excited to be here. And at the same time, I think getting here, honestly, once I got here, I was like, what am I doing here? This is going to be like more difficult than I realized or that I thought of. And I have a lot of like family stuff going on with a cousin who was really sick. And so I just felt guilty for being so far away. And I say this because it was this like pent up emotion of like, this is where I've wanted to be for like 2 years, like literally moving back to the States, moving to Ohio. I did not want to be there, wanted to be in a very cosmopolitan, like international place. So excited to get to know everybody. And then like, it just was this like, sadness that I totally didn't expect. And my birthday is early September. And so the floor, the RA, along with Jonathan and Brian, I think Jonathan or Brian won, had to get me down to a surprise birthday party of like all of my newest friends on the floor. And I literally just burst into tears because I was so, you remember, I was so like emotional and so like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, like, it was, I can't even explain it. And I know that Jonathan was like, it's okay. What's she doing? I don't know what to do. Like, y'all were so sweet. And it was that, okay, this is going to be okay. This is going to be okay. Because I was thinking about leaving because my cousin was so sick.
I wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. cause my roommate made a shake when he got back from the gym. He says that he's sorry, but I don't buy it cause I don't know when I last slept in. I got the Thurston blues and in the morning I'll have them again. Every night I study in Gelman cause Thurston ain't a quiet place. Parties all the time, and they always gotta turn up the bass. Even in the hallway, there's a girl crying on FaceTime. My room is a mess, I just failed a test. My neighbors keep me up and I don't need more stress. My fridge just broke, the radiator too. At this point I don't know what to do. I got the Thurston blues and it seems like you like you like you like you. I got the Thurston blues and it seems like you do too. I got the Thurston blues. Yeah. Amos Coast is alive.
No, should I tell that one? I was during finals. It was during finals, and we heard this story about. See, this is where memory gets funny, but about that somebody had shot somebody. Somebody had a bullet come into their room, and that created a little commotion. I don't remember which semester or what, and I think it was somebody from Mitchell with an air gun or a BB gun or something. And that was but that was very scary to find out during finals when you're all supposed to be studying that, like, oh my God, people are shooting into the dorm. So that caused a little commotion. Slater's was the name of a campus caterer. When they used to have the campus caterers, they're like Aramark, I guess, is one now at the stadiums and things. So Slater's was one. The best Slater story was they always had hard-boiled eggs for breakfast in case you didn't want whatever else they were serving. And one day they forgot to hard-boil them. And everybody's cracking eggs. one person after another. That was very funny. They had all these dozens of eggs out. I loved it. Well, one of the best things was most campuses had the bathrooms in the halls, and we all had our own private bathrooms. And I don't know how it is now, but we had maid service too, and maids would come in. They wouldn't make our beds or anything, but they'd clean the bathrooms and vacuum, and we'd leave our trash outside our door, and somebody would pick up our trash. It was really pretty. And we had laundry service, and we took our sheets down every week and picked up clean sheets. I don't know if it's still like that. And our dining hall, we ate most of our meals in this building, and we were not allowed to wear slacks on campus, or to class or anything. So when we went out, we had like 5 minutes to get off campus if we were in slacks. And I don't know, it was really different. Like, that's all I can say. But it's funny how walking around now, I'm remembering, I know where I am. It looks different, but I still, like I said, we turn right here, we turn left here. It's still enough the same.
Were there any other like restrictions or things that were different specifically about this dorm compared to others?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Compared to Mitchell next door, yeah, because that was the boys' dorm. We had sign in and sign out sheets, and our curfew during the week. First year was 11 o'clock, and after that it was midnight. And on the weekends, first year it was 1, and after that it was 2. And actually somehow this was supposed to keep us safe, but I think more what it did was kept us out later than we might have stayed out otherwise, because you never wanted to get back before curfew. And you could be on a horrible date, but everybody knew you didn't have to be back. So in some ways, I mean, it was horrible anyway that we were treated like children when the guys were just running wild next door. But, well, the dress code was horrendous, that we had to wear skirts all the time. Yeah. And like guys couldn't come in. If my father came down, my parents came down on a weekend that wasn't a visiting weekend, or it was a Saturday, not a Sunday, whatever. Men couldn't, even your father couldn't come in, as I remember it.
So besides the TV, some of the things that I remember from those times in the beginning was the Gulf War.
Yep.
So we were here when everything was launched. We were in either this room or that room. We were still debating on which room we were in, the one on the other side, watching George Sr. on TV talk about the Persian Gulf.
Right. And I remember very clearly, like during the lead up to the Gulf War, going out, walking to the White House, and being out there. People were having vigils and just, very quietly demonstrating and hoping that there would not be a war. But of course there was. And, I have clear memories here in Thurston, because we, being in the common room and just watching as a group the beginning of the war and CNN coverage of the war. In the ground floor Thurston TV rooms, it was that the rooms were packed. Everyone was very interested to see what happened. People weren't sure. People were very concerned about whether there would be a draft, and we were all 18, 19 years old, and if a draft was called, we would have been the first ones called to service. So when everyone else in Thurston was asleep, we'd be up at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, we had good breakfast. So.
And I remember we would go downstairs to the Thurston Dining Commons and have coffee and breakfast, and it would usually be the only two of us and Daisy. Our friend Daisy, who worked for GW Food Services, would check us in and scan our IDs before breakfast and
say, "What?
Hey, baby."
And then she struck back. It's just a thing we always remember from back then. And she was a sweet lady who always felt like she knew you and cared about you.
Right, really cared about it. Like she was like that with everyone. She was always she welcomed us every meal.
Your mom and your grandma here,
right?
So that was.
We had Daisy, and I don't know how long she was employee at GW, but she's part of our memories too. And like the community that we had downstairs in the dining hall, I think that's something that was very important to our building of our community. But I guess the last thing I would say in terms of Thurston as part of the GW experience is even to this day, I feel that the people who were in Thurston, we kind of are somewhat like a subset of the GW community, and talking with other alums and people in my class who were not in Thurston freshman year, even 25 years later, we're still, we're kind of catching up and saying, well, were you in Thurston or were you not in Thurston? And
That's an important question.
and I think
25 years later.
25 years later, it's an important question because, how you knew people and how you created your social circles, a lot of times it made a big difference. And people who were not in Thurston, they kind of represented a different subgroup of the boarding population.
They wish they were in Thurston.
And they wish they were in Thurston. Thurston was the cool place to be, and that's where everything happened, and all the myths started, and the stories, and it's definitely a big part of my GW experience, and I'll never forget living in Thurston Hall.
Same here.
It's 24 years later, and you're quite emotional in your time in undergrad, particularly freshman year, and everything seems like such a big deal. And you're also pushing the boundaries maybe on who you thought you were, and the values and the experiences that you had with your family, and then getting exposed to so many different things. And so Tracy and I would on and off fight about mostly my behavior. But I recall one particular night that we just got a big blowout in my room, and we were all having a good time and having a party, and we had a big blowout, and she stormed back to her room. We had ordered takeaway from somewhere, and you left. We were all upset, and to this day we still argue about we never got the payment from Tracy for the food.
I didn't know
she
that.
She still owes us money.
I didn't even know that. I probably did owe the money. I didn't know that.
The passion of our interactions is a vivid memory, and we were like the bestest of friends, and then we hated each other and wouldn't talk for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. And what I remember, so yes, everything Brian says is true. I think I think the more important of the two things I would be so frustrated, and it was absolutely me trying to figure out like, who am I? What is life? Like different values, different perspectives. And what I appreciated the most is I can remember Brian like tracking me down. Like we probably hadn't spoken in like 2 months at this point in time. And I was just like, okay, we're done. We're no longer, because in the at one point during freshman year, it was like, yeah, we're friends now, but like, we'll get better friends and like, whatever. Like it was not better friends, but it was like, well, we'll see. Cause we're meeting all these people and like, whatever. And then at one point in time, like you were literally like chasing me around the campus and like following me. And you're like, no, this is a friendship that means something to me. And I want to be your friend. And it wasn't just because we just happen to live across the hall from each other freshman year. I really care about you and I really want to be your friend. And I don't think anybody ever fought for a friendship like that before. It made sense, no I'm kidding. But it meant a lot to me then. It still means a lot to me now. And it's just because, we were in the same proximity. We did live across the hall freshman year, but we became real lifelong friends. As corny as that is. So thank you.
I remember the altercation in Funger Hall. I followed you to Funger Hall. It was the elevator lobby of Funger Hall.
Yes.
And we both grown so much from knowing each other and have become better for it.
Yeah. Oh. Love you. Yeah. Sorry, that's not. No.
We got distracted.
Yeah, we got.
So one day, I'm walking down the hallway towards the elevator with one of my roommates, and people put flyers up in front and around the elevators on all the floors all the times. They get ripped down after a few days because they're technically not supposed to be there. But there's this, little paper flyer in front of the elevator. It says Basta. And I'm like, what? And I look at it and it says $5, deliver a jar of pasta to your door every week. And I was like, yeah, okay, yes. I saw the guy's Instagram handle and immediately hit him up. I was like, what's the word? I want it now. Can I have it now? He's like, okay, well, you got four types of pastas. You got 4 types of sauce. Take your pick. Sunday night, I'm dropping it at your door. It's like, okay, perfect. Sunday nights is when I have jazz orchestra rehearsal. It's from 7 to 9. I'm so hungry afterwards. So I'm just getting so excited about it. And then he tells me, okay, you've chosen the spaghetti that's actually, it can compact more. So there's still room in the jar. Do you want some like vegetables in there? I was like, give me broccoli, put some broccoli in that thing. And he put some broccoli in it. And so I get back to my dorm. He's like, yeah, okay, I'm not really delivering them anymore, but if you want to stop by my room, you can come pick it up. So I book it down to the 4th floor where this guy lives. I'm like, yo, it's Nick. Do you have my pasta? And he's like, it's right here, dude. And he gives me this, it's like the big, large, extra large mason jar filled with pasta. And I bring this jar back to my room. I'm so excited. I bust out one of our like paper disposable bowls and I just dump out half this jar. I couldn't even finish the whole thing. There was so much in it. So I dump out half the jar in here and I'm having everybody, and I mean everybody, all of my roommates, all of my neighbors, everyone who walks by the door, I'm having them come in and try this amazing pasta. The sauce, beautiful. The broccoli, oh, it was the perfect touch. And I mean, it was amazing. So I did that every week for 5 weeks. And then, we leave for fall break. So I'm not there that week. And we get back and I hit him up and I'm like, hey, are you still doing the pasta thing? I'd love to order from you. And he goes, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing that anymore. I'm going to be focusing more on my clothing brand. And I was just like heartbroken because that was maybe the best part of my week every week. And so I didn't have pasta for like another month maybe. And then after a jazz orchestra rehearsal, my friend Andrew, he's in the jazz orchestra and he's also an RA in Thurston on the 5th floor. And I kept half jokingly, but half being serious, saying, oh man, I really want pasta right now because I hadn't had pasta since that guy stopped doing that business. And so Andrew just looks at me and he goes, I'll make you some pasta. And I was blown away because I was not expecting that at all. And so we book it back to Thurston, go to his room, beautiful room, orange painted walls, couches, and nice posters on the wall. And I just sit there in his little kitchenette. He does the dishes. He makes the pasta, a lot of it. And we just sit across from each other. We listen to German rap music, get to know each other better, and I eat a bunch of pasta. And so, yeah, pasta has like a very special place in my heart, especially as it regards Thurston Hall. And I'll never forget that.
I think probably one of the moments where I felt like I probably did it right was the day after the November 2016 presidential election, when there was a lot of tension in the air, in the city as a whole. And basically, I just emptied my fridge and I made Jamaican food. I'm half Jamaican, half Danish. And I made curried chicken and I made curried chickpeas for the vegetarians. And I made as much rice as I possibly could. And I just said, sometimes when there are moments like this, when people feel very far apart from each other, the best thing we can do is break bread together. So come on by and get something. And I feel like everybody felt that they could come and get something. And people didn't just grab food and leave. They actually hung out and talked and decompressed a little around that moment. So that's one of my really good memories. So I lived on the first floor and the piano lounge was across the way, and there's hangout space right on the first floor, the TV lounge, but also just sort of in the lobby area. I think I'm thinking of a particular student who would play his ukulele in the elevator, right? I was right behind the elevator, so and also in the lobby and take requests and make up songs, and that was very much Thurston. And now that I'm talking about the elevator, I remember one moment where the fire department had to come because the elevator was stuck, and it was stuck for quite a while. And when they finally got it open, it was like those old movies of clowns coming out of this really little car. It looked like there were 20 people jammed in the elevator, and they were very relieved to get out of there. And that was definitely one of those "that's Thurston" moments.
All right, here we go, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. We turning up. Got the juice cause I'm mixing it up. Ayo, thirsty. We turning up. We finna get lit as fuck. Now all the ladies in the house say yeah. And all the fellas in the house say yeah. And if you're having a good time, say yeah. And if we're grooving with the vibe, say yeah. I gotta stick the cheese girl, cause I'm broke as hell. Man, it tastes like shit, but I can't even tell. Cause I'm lit as fuck, and I got personnel. I got Mikey and Jason and Rito on the back. When we walk up in the room, everybody relax. We calling all the shots, quarterback. Passing down the street, we got the snatch. You know we're only party in the 60s. And I got all space when I'm dishing out my business. Ladies on the mission, my wishes but my visit. And the boys, then maybe you can get up in it. It's getting real iffy. Sometimes I just sit back and laugh. Nickelback vines. Look at this graph. Now I'm tick-tock clock. Whoa, once light it up, I'ma give it a toe. Lily rockin' sleeping, now I'm hitting the bus. You're sweating, man, you should get icy cold. While you're at Wawa, please take a sip. And the Italian salt, pepper, and oil. And a tasty cake, and a chocolate milk. Order the kill, and I order the kill, and I'm scoring the kill. While you're sitting at Mickey D's, happy order a bill. Or walk through Whole Foods looking for something to steal. But you should see somebody, you got too many people. And it's Thursday, we turn it up. Grab the juice, cause I'm mixing it up. And I'm thirsty, we turn it up. We finna get lit as fuck, yeah.
We came here to party. We came here to have a good one. We came here to find somebody, someone to bring our tuition.
And you're thirsty, we turning up. Grab the juice cause I'm mixing it up. Hey, you're thirsty, we turning up. Come on, we finna get lit as fuck. Hey, yo, thirsty, we turning up. Grab the juice cause I'm mixing it up. Hey, yo, thirsty, we turning up. We finna get lit as fuck, yeah. We out.
Wow, James, you made all that commotion, you cleared all that space just to sing a song, and you didn't even think to sing happy birthday to our beloved hostess, Julia. Kind of fucked up if you ask me.
My bad.
So, the RAs just knocked and they said they're calling GWPD right now.
Bye, Julia. Happy birthday.
Get out.
My name is Anna Little Sonia. I am a junior studying political communication and sustainability, and I lived in Thurston from August of 2017 to March of 2020. My favorite thing about living in Thurston is that everyone at GW universally has an experience in Thurston, and it becomes this thing that ties the GW community together. And ties alumni to students. You know, I think when I meet alumni, I always ask where they lived their freshman year, because if they say Thurston, that's like, oh, lived there for 3 years. And there's automatically some resonance with that. There are other parts of campus that are, you know, I don't think that there's a other part of campus as it is that is so ubiquitous in student culture and student living than Thurston. And I think that the worst part about living in Thurston was how the university's attitude of Thurston as a whole. Obviously, 40% of the freshman class live in Thurston, which means it's just a lot of students. But I always found it really frustrating how GWPD was there 24/7 and no other building 24/7. And that there was like this like attitude about Thurston on campus as this like place of like debauchery, which wasn't necessarily true. But yeah, like I definitely found it frustrating constantly being like in no other building. Like, did you always need your GWID? Did you always need to sign in guests? Which I thought was frustrating. And I think in general, like there's an attitude of the university kind of giving up on Thurston, like the terribly mismatched furniture in the basement that was like kind of gross, and like just like a lack of care, like that like basement in general just being like so hot, and like us trying to bring up these concerns about being like, well, you know, like it was never a priority, like because it had always been planned on being renovated. Like the 3 years I lived there, like obviously like there was never going to be anything like done, which was fine but unique. But my favorite thing about being an RA in Thurston was you got to see students have a very similar experience. My first year as an RA, I got to see them have a very similar experience to what I had and kind of go through the motions and go through the school year really consistently. You just see like people's like beliefs about GW, beliefs about classes and student orgs, like they just are so similar year after year. And so the best thing about being an RA is that you get to, you know, be a part of people's kind of triumphs and be a part of people's, you know, struggles. And then in Thurston, that's really the most special part about being an RA in Thurston is that the distance between you and your residents is so small, and that you get to hear them constantly, which sometimes was annoying. Actually, a lot of times was annoying, but you know, in the best of times, it's really endearing and special. And when people knock on your door to tell you things, you have to have the compassion of remembering what it was like to be a first year student and being excited about everything. And that GW students are cynical. I'm cynical, but there's something really special about first years that aren't inherently, in that their attitudes and beliefs about the world in GW and DC are just so precious. And I'm really thankful I got that experience. So one of the craziest experiences that I had in Thurston was being on call during what I call the Thurston fire flood of 2019. It was quite the night. It was a Friday night, and I was on call with one of my very dearest friends, Kayla. And often when you were doing rounds, you would run into people and talk to people. And you would kind of take your time going through the building. And that was the case this night. We definitely had one of our slowest rounds that we had ever had. And so we're on the third floor. We were having a conversation with the resident and then the RA on that floor when we hear this noise that kind of sounded like EDM music. It was like pipe screeching. We're like, what is that? And then something kind of smelled burnt, and we're like, we need to figure this out. And so we are on the hallway of the back stairwell, walking towards the elevator. And so as we turn the corner, a girl comes running out of her room screaming. And I go into her room, and there's water pouring out into the hallway. And so she runs back into her room. She's in a towel. So she's running back into her room, and I see there's smoke coming out of her room, and there is a toaster that she puts into her closet. She puts a candle into her closet, and I'm screaming at her to go put on a shirt, or put on like a sweatshirt and like pants and just like get out. but she kept running things back and forth between her room and a friend's room. And so I go ahead and I call GWPD and from my phone, and I was like, hey, like, we have an emergency in Thurston. Like, there's a flood. We like a sprinklers put out a fire. Like, please come and send officers as soon as possible. And it was one of the slowest GWPD response times I had ever experienced. Like, at this point, like, I've called GWPD a few times, like, always like fairly expedient, really depends. But I don't know if it just felt like forever, but it was a really scary experience because there was just all this water pouring into the hallway. And so Kayla and I go and we knock on the doors of everyone on the third and the second floor. And we say, there's water coming, get your valuables and leave. Like, just be mindful of the fact that, we were yelling at all of these people. And mind you, it's Thursday on a Friday night around 9:00. So there's a certain, things, and people were really freaked out about why RAs were knocking the door. And we said, get your computers and like your phones and just like get out of Thurston. Anything that you're going to need, because we knew that the building was going to be evacuated, just because, there had been a week before like a very small electrical fire, and it was like caused no damage. It was nothing, but we were outside for quite a bit of time. And so I kind of knew that something was going to happen. So we're knocking on the door. PD finally comes. And they just have to call someone to try to shut off the sprinklers. And that's when the fire alarm goes off. And so we stay with the police officers for like 10 minutes, helping residents get out, and just helping. Everyone on the third floor was really freaked out. So we were with them trying to knock on doors, telling people to put like towels, like try to kind of barricade their doors as they left. And at some point, PD turns to us and say that you guys need to leave too. So I remember leaving the building, and it was in November, and my shoes, the water went up far into our shoes. Like, every single time I tell the story, the water is higher. So unsure of how high the water actually was, but our shoes and socks were completely soaked, and we didn't have time to go run back into our rooms and get a winter coat. So we are freezing on the street, and all the RAs were really mindful that we had a role in trying to legitimize people's concerns and make sure that people knew that this was a really scary situation, and that, obviously, like, suddenly having to leave, that for the first 15-20 minutes of a fire drill, no one knows what's going on. And so I think in the beginning people just thought it was a fire drill, but I remember watching on the other side of the street as the fire trucks came, that they realized how it was actually legitimately a fire. And so that's when the rumors came. There's just so much uncertainty about what it was, and it was kind of like immediately, right? Like, the memes came, and like, I have every single person I've ever known text everyone I ever known at GW, like the one person that I sat next to, in econ my freshman year, like that type of person, texting me, being like, knowing I was an RA in Thurston, being like, what was going on. And in my head it was funny because I was on call and actually was the one that called PD. And so I just remember watching with students as they were like, what is going on? And so when the fire trucks came, and they were bringing up the ladder, and they brought the ladder all the way up, and there was, it was just kind of like this disbelief of what was going on. And then the power went off. And so at that point, it was recognized that we weren't coming back for a while. And so it was just our job to try to get the sidewalk clear. So me and maybe like 5 other RAs were just telling people, hey guys, if you have anywhere to stay, like, don't stay out here. It's going to be a while. You have students who are really, really resistant and upset, understandably, but there was nothing they could do, and there was nothing we could do either. And so we were just trying to get people out. And so at that point, the LeBlancs came, and we're just trying to figure out what had gone on. And so I'm there with President LeBlanc, Anne LeBlanc, Stuart Robinette, just being like, what went on? I had taken all these videos because they knew that they were going to need something to just be like what had happened, because I was there 10 minutes before GWPD. So I'd taken all these videos and I shared them with Mr. on call. And then Anne LeBlanc goes to me and she's like, "Oh my God, aren't you freezing?" I was like, "Yes, my shoes and socks are soaked. Like, I'm so cold." And so she runs into her house and gets me a pair of President LeBlanc socks. So really appreciate that. Still haven't returned them. Maybe I'll get to, someday. Um, if that has ever caused any marital troubles between the LeBlancs of him missing a pair of socks, like, my bad. But we were in the Marvin Center until 2:33 in the morning, when we were notified that floors 4 through 9 could return. And at that point, it was so bizarre. That walk from the Marvin Center to Thurston was kind of triumphant, right? And the entire building is lined with PD officers. They had to call a lot of officers who were off duty to come help because they needed to make sure that people weren't going to incorrect floors and all these things. So there were maybe like 8 officers outside. The entire lobby is lined with officers, and then in every stairwell. And it was like, they were all hyped. They were like, "Welcome home," all these things. And so I get home and it was like the best feeling of just like not having, really eaten dinner. And like, I was just on call. Like, that was not how I was supposed to spend my Friday night. And coming home and then having my door open and having all of my residents come and be like, "What happened?" And trying to be judicious with information that I was sharing, but also, and this was definitely a theme of my style of RA, like being completely transparent of what I knew, or what I could, really share, because it was a learning experience. Like, I had illegal candles in Thurston and I never, lit a single one after that. Like, I think that we learned that our building is in many ways really resilient, because it did not burn down to the ground.
So I was in the habit of crossing the street to feed the sparrows, right? This is like my little touch of nature and zenness living in Thurston. And one Saturday morning I was out there and there was a photographer across the street who seemed to be doing a photo shoot with an athlete. And then these people came, this couple, a man and a woman, came down the sidewalk in front of Thurston. And the next thing I know, he's down on one knee proposing to her. The photographer abandons the photo shoot, has apparently been set up to capture this moment of a marriage proposal in front of Thurston. And I think that was the moment that I realized sort of the emotional attachment that people had to Thurston, that I never lived in a dorm, so I never had that particular experience. And so that was a very warm and touching revelation to me, right, of what Thurston could mean to people.
Can you speak a little bit more to what leaving Thurston was like? You obviously had a little bit less rushed of an experience compared to everyone else, but you certainly still you kind of had the experience of having to stay behind and watch everyone leave and kind of, for lack of a better term, man the ship.
Right. So I actually came back in the middle of spring break and pretty much everybody had left at that point, and it felt like a shell, right? I mean, what makes Thurston is the people in it and the relationships, with the area coordinator, with the RAs, with the facilities staff, with the folks who keep the building clean, with security, with the residents. There's this dynamic, right, that's always going on in Thurston. And when the residents aren't there, when you all aren't there, it's just, a solid old building. I moved in thinking that it would be interesting to negotiate living and working in the same place. I had a sense of logistics. I had a sense of things I should do. What I didn't expect was how much joy I would find living there, how much laughter would be part of the experience, how much I would be taught about the world. And so I already miss that. I look forward to seeing what the new Thurston looks like, and how that fosters that feeling. Because whatever we want to say about Thurston, it had a definite identity, right? It had a personality, a big personality, and I would wish absolutely the same for the new space that's going to be there as well. Yeah.
Leaving Thurston was really sad. It was just sad. Like, because we knew that, we would not live there forever. And we knew that once we stopped living there, it was never going to be the same because it was being renovated after our class moved on from that building. So we knew that from the get-go, but we thought we had more time. We're all getting ready to leave for spring break, expecting to come back after a week. And then 4 or 5 days before we all leave, we find out that, no, yeah, you're actually going to stay home for another 2 weeks after spring break, which we all pretty much knew meant that we weren't going to come back at all. And that was just like, there was like a really profound sense of loss everywhere in that building because, again, we knew it wasn't going to be forever, but we thought we had just like a little bit more time. We weren't ready to leave. I definitely wasn't ready to leave. It just sucked because it didn't feel like we had a real chance to say goodbye to each other and to a place that had become our home. As far as iconically freshman dorm buildings go, Thurston has to be the best. It just has to be. There's like a high school sized amount of people living in this place. It was in desperate need of deep cleaning and renovation that was never going to happen while we were there. It had so many flaws, but everything about it was like what made it so special. It's like, when people tell you like, oh, it builds character, like, you get into some real trouble or you have a fatal flaw about yourself or, you get injured and it's like, it builds character. That was like really true for this place. It was an experience like no other I will ever have again. Honestly, hopefully, I don't want to live in another building filled with 1,200 people, but given the circumstances, it was just as perfect as it could have been.
And so that's why I think it's ironic that we all left because of coronavirus, that was the thing that took Thurston out of commission early. It wasn't a fire, it wasn't, a flood, it wasn't, some crazy resident issue. It was because of a pandemic. I will take away those lessons of resiliency, and just like, if Mabel Thurston Hall can survive for so long, we can all too. And that there's a lot of things that happen in Thurston that people don't know about, just as there were things that happened to me in Thurston that no one knows about. And that there's something really special about the keeper of our secrets is 1900 F Street and that brick building that is going to look different, but I hope the essence and the character remain in some part the same. But this last time leaving Thurston and knowing in my head that there wasn't a really strong likelihood of that we were going to come back, it felt like I was abandoning Thurston. And I was obviously abandoning my stuff and all these connections, but it was really hard for me not to have said goodbye to our incredible, janitorial staff. Incredible. Mr. Franklin, Miss Julie. I'll never see them again, most likely, but literally the best. And even a lot of GW security, GWPD TAP officers like Officer Taylor and all of these, people that like I had seen, and it was just so abrupt that was really hard. And leaving knowing that I was never going to come back, but that Thurston was never going to come back in its form. And I think that you don't know what you will miss until it's gone. And speaking to my friends who really miss Thurston after their freshman year. That there's something that you will never again in your life live in such close proximity to all your friends.
Long time coming, today's the day. I got my bags all packed and I'm on my way. But it ain't good and it ain't right, 'cause everybody's saying all their hurried goodbyes.
What's a home but a place? A place you feel safe, a place you can grow, a place to create and take breaks from the race. First year was a struggle. 6 guys in one room. Bathroom always dirty. Trash can always full. But we party in the hallway. Chair race until we see the RA. 4th floor lit is what they all say. And we always on Game Smash Melee. But when shit got real, we all stepped in the ring. Tanks on the corners when they crown Trump king. March through the streets while we scream and sing. The cherries still blossom at the start of spring.
Long time coming, today's the day. I got my bags all packed and I'm on my way. But it ain't good and it ain't right, 'cause everybody's saying all their hurried goodbyes.
Songs sound happy at the end of the progression. World already shit, so I'm avoiding my depression. I'm trying to survive and make it through this recession. Corona got my tongue, but I got a lot of questions. Will I ever see my home again? Will I ever get to see my friends? Will my family make it through to the end? Will they lie in a ditch without a funeral? This shit ain't normal, unusual. How long will you last in the crucible? Now that your home is a cubicle and days haze away pharmaceuticals, I sit back and laugh. This won't be the last time, 'cause somehow the future always mimics the past.
Long time coming, today's the day. I got my bags all packed and I'm on my way. But it ain't good and it ain't right, 'cause every